I'm Gabriel Morency for Sports Interaction. Ho, 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 ho. It's hard to believe that we're at this time of the year again. Candy canes, Christmas carols, turkey dinners, and, of course, gift buying. And you know what? These gifts don't buy themselves now, do they? Unless you're Lindsay Lohan, but that's another story. Now, one of the reasons I like the holiday season is because we've got some big games to bet on, and we've got some huge games to bet on this weekend. Let's get down to business. Let's start with the Friday night card. You've got a unique situation here. Normally, when a college coach is coaching his final game with a team in a championship game, it's because he's bolting to another job. Well, Rick Neuheisel might get another job. Maybe he's going to be like Bruce Boudreau and get hired 48 hours later. I don't know. But I do know that Rick Neuheisel is done with the UCLA Bruins, and I do know that the Oregon Ducks are going to cover this number. Normally, I wouldn't like to lay 31 points, but you've got a lot of kids on the Ducks that are going to be playing their final home game. As this game isn't being played on a neutral field, this game is being played in Eugene. Expect the Oregon Ducks to roll. I don't think they're going to let up on UCLA. Now, they don't need any style points. They win the football game. They're going to the Rose Bowl. But nevertheless, Oregon's offense is just too good, and UCLA's offense is just too bad. As bad as UCLA's offense is, they should be able to score 14, maybe 17 points. It's not as if though the Oregon Duck defense is impenetrable, and the Ducks have given up points to inferior teams this year. But I don't like laying points normally, but in this instance, I will. Oregon crushes the UCLA Bruins. Northern Illinois and Ohio, this is an interesting football game. The Ohio Bobcats, they're not a pretty team, but they're an effective team. Meanwhile, you've got Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois' offense is amazing. They hung up 63 on Toledo in that 63-60 epic MAC midweek win a couple of weeks ago. We know what Northern Illinois can do, but we also know that Northern Illinois has a tendency to lose in big football games, and this is a big football game. This is for the MAC championship. With that being stated, I think Northern Illinois will get it done. I think there's going to be a ton of points scored in that football game. I think there's going to be a ton of points scored in a lot of football games. I know. These are championship games, right? Well, we joke about UCLA getting 31 points in a championship game. How about the LSU Tigers? LSU were laying 14 points, give or take, to the Georgia Bulldogs. And the fact of the matter is 12 of the last 13 SEC championship games have been decided by double digits or more. There's been a ton of blowouts. Why? Because the SEC often produces the national championship. So one of the SEC teams in the championship game usually ends up being the national champion, which means they're the best team in the country. We saw that last year with Auburn getting it done against South Carolina. I think the LSU Tigers are going to get it done against Georgia. There's a potential for a Georgia Bulldog backdoor cover because Murray's a very good quarterback, and they're going to keep on playing pitch and catch all day long. But the fact of the matter is the LSU Tigers secondary is better than like half the secondaries in the National Football League. LSU are just too good. Their defense is just too fast, too quick, too good. People talk about, well, they don't have a passing attack. Doesn't matter. LSU end up scoring 40 points a game anyways, and don't think there's going to be any home field advantage for the Georgia Bulldogs because this game's taking place in Atlanta. Don't forget, the BCS National Championship game is taking place in New Orleans. The Bayou Bengal Nation, they don't have to travel for the National Championship game, and Atlanta is not that far from Louisiana in the first place. Expect a ton of LSU Tiger fans. And anyways, you see how many song girls and cheerleaders and people twirling batons and everything else in between these SEC teams have. There's going to be like 8,000 band members in the stadium alone. Now, we got an intriguing football game with the Houston Cougars and Southern Miss. Southern Miss, really screwed up a couple of weeks ago and somehow lost as like a 24-point favorite. But that was a couple of weeks ago. They're going to give Houston all they can handle for about a half, and then the Houston Cougars are going to pull away. The Houston Cougars are that good, and now their defense is starting to come around. But as good as Houston Cougars defense is playing, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because this game's going over the number. You cannot take the under in a Case Keenum-led Houston Cougar football game. Now, all right, speaking of Houston, let's talk about the Houston Texans. Something tells me that the Houston Texans probably wish that they could call the Houston Cougars and say, hey, can we bore your quarterback on Sunday? But they can't do that. They're going to battle with TJ Yates. Now, they were fortunate that they played the Jacksonville Jaguars last week. The Jaguars can't score on anybody. And the Houston Texans had a bye week to prepare Matt Leinart to be the starting quarterback. Matt Leinart goes down. Now it's TJ Yates. You got to wonder what the Houston Texans are going to do in the coming weeks. And they can afford to give up a game. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Tennessee and Buffalo. And normally I love the Buffalo Bills. This game I'm really not sure about. Buffalo probably win this game, but I'm not really sure. But I do believe the Atlanta Falcons can go into Lone Star State and get it done. You know, Matt Ryan is a quarterback that I really am convinced is going to win a Super Bowl eventually. But now you got Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. You got Drew Brees doing his thing once again. It's not that the Falcons are really underachieving. They kind of are what they are. It's just they're not quite as good as some of these other clubs, including the Dallas Cowboys. DeMarco Murray, the pride of Las Vegas, Nevada, tearing it apart. This guy might win Rookie of the Year despite the fact that he's barely played. He's already moving in on 1,000 yards. Last year, Dallas actually lost to the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona, but last year was a disaster for the Pokes. This year is different. Dallas is going to roll in there, and Dallas is going to get it done. Speaking of the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers, I love the over in this football game against the New York Giants. You guys obviously saw the New York Giants' porous defense get shredded and carved up by the New Orleans Saints. Green Bay's going to score points. Green Bay's used to playing in the elements, even if it's a little bit windy in New Jersey. It doesn't matter. And the Giants are going to be able to score some points as well. This game's going way over the number. As far as New Orleans and Detroit is concerned, seems like a lock to go over the number, doesn't it? But there's no such thing as locks besides on your front door. I have a strange feeling about that game. I'll bet the over because that's a percentage play, but I got a strange feeling about that game. But one of my biggest plays of the year will be on the over of the New York Giant Green Bay Packer tilt. As I stated, we got a lot of cool things coming up. We got the UFC 140, which is a great card with Machida and John Jones. But before we wrap this up, we got to talk about the Ultimate Fighter. Now, I didn't watch the Ultimate Fighter this year. And even though I'm an MMA huge guy and I host an MMA show, I just can't do it. To me, the Ultimate Fighter is like Big Brother on steroids. I'm down with the fights, but I'm not down with all the drama, with everything that's going on in the sports world. I just don't have time for it. But I will be watching the Ultimate Fighter finale. And I do believe that Jason Mayhem Miller can give Michael Bisping all that he can handle. I don't think that Bisping's going to knock Miller out. Bisping generally has been winning by outpointing and getting the decision when it's all said and done. Miller is a freak, man. The guy's a freak out of the cage, and he's a freak in the cage. He's an extremely hard dude to finish. He's an underrated fighter, and I think there's some value taking a shot with Miller. Now, I don't like the term value, but I legitimately believe that Miller has a strong chance of actually winning this fight, and at the price that's out there, I'm going to take a shot with Jason Mayhem Miller. Now, I just want to wrap up this week's segment by giving you guys a little word of advice. If a general manager in the National Hockey League asks you to become their head coach, say no, man, no, and run far away. As we've seen, it was a crazy week in the National Hockey Leagues. NHL coaches have the same job security as like a police chief in Baghdad, Iraq. Now, it was a crazy week in the National Hockey League. We've seen it. Hasn't really resulted with wins with the coaching changes. I expect that to change and expect Washington Capital games to stay under the number with a new sheriff in town. I'm Gabe Morency for Sports Interaction. Ho, ho, ho. May the winners be yours.